Dan's anger burned in his chest.
Hey, tell me, does it like him get a girl as fine as you?
He forced himself to stay composed. At home, he stood under the shower, hoping it could rinse away the shame. But later, lying in bed, the memory wouldn't fade. It kept playing over and over. For 18 years, he'd been a lethal assassin. Yet he chose to walk away, devoting himself to being a husband and father instead. That's what I truly admire about him. Welcome back to DC Recap. I may not have many subscribers yet, but your comments are the spark that keeps me going. Our story begins in Buffalo, where Dan, a top car salesman, consistently earns Salesman of the Month, thanks to his uncanny ability to read people like a book. Dan leads a modest, content life and looks forward to celebrating his wedding anniversary with his wife, Jessica. They have 3 children, Kyle, Max, and Na. But peace at home is often disrupted by the constant tension between Kyle and Max, and Dan finds it difficult to bond with Kyle, who's always lost in video games. Meanwhile, their eldest, Na, is thinking about changing her college major under her boyfriend's influence, a choice that leaves Dan feeling uneasy. Dan does his best to guide his kids, but they rarely pay attention. Kyle constantly sneaks away to play video games, and Na clings to her independence. At the annual festival, Dan and Jessica shared a sweet moment on a roller coaster, ending with a joyful kiss. But the mood quickly soured when a stranger took their photo and posted it online. Things escalated when the same man spilled a drink on Dan and hurled an insult at Jessica. Though seething with anger, Dan chose to walk away, leaving Jessica both relieved and a little disappointed. Back home, he kept his frustration to himself, while Jessica turned to boxing to blow off steam, accidentally landing a punch on her sparring partner. That mishap sparked an unexpected friendship with Gwen. A travel agent, she soon found herself opening up to over post-workout smoothies. Jessica admits to Dan that she feels stuck. She loves him, but is frustrated by his comfort with their routine. While out shopping with Max, Dan notices a suspicious man tailing them. When the man attacks, Dan takes him down in seconds, stunning everyone.
Really? Daniel.
Back home, he opens a hidden stash, a gun, cash, and an old passport. Shaken, he calls his former associate, Augie, to arrange new identities for his family. Augie warned Dan they were in danger, likely targeted by his old boss, McCaffrey, and urged him to run. Dan, a former assassin, admitted he'd hidden his past and feared McCaffrey had tracked him through the festival photo. While searching for Na, he found her hiding under the bleachers, crushed after quitting her job due to betrayal. But there was no time to dwell. They still had to find her brother. Kyle had skipped chess club to play video games at a neighbor's house. Dan gathered the kids and told them they were heading to Vegas, convincing Jessica, still at work, to join the spontaneous trip she'd always dreamed of. She agreed. But when they arrived, McCaffrey's men were already waiting in the parking lot. As a bus passed, Dan slipped away from his pursuers without alerting his family. With satellite tracking making escape harder, he drove to work, closed the gate, and removed a hidden tracker from his car. The pursuers lost him. To buy time, he planted the tracker on a colleague's car, heading for the highway, gaining less than 33 hours. Meanwhile, his family unknowingly posted online, so Dan quickly confiscated their phones. To them, the trip felt aimless, but the real problem was, they didn't know where they were going. At the travel agency, a clever exchange earned Dan's family a map, briefly bringing them closer. Meanwhile, McCaffrey visited their home. Sure, someone would slip up. Later, a stranger recognized Kyle from streaming and asked for a selfie. Dan saw it and knew McCaffrey would be tipped off. He kept driving. Spotting 3 trackers, he played music through the family's headphones as they slept to muffle sounds. When a bullet shattered his side mirror, Dan swerved, crashed into a pursuer, and escaped the ambush. Dan's family slept deeply, the heaviest sleepers he'd seen. After a long night of driving and shaking off their last pursuer, Dan finally rested while they stayed asleep. Near the college, Na resisted visiting the campus, while Jessica bragged about her party skills. Na admitted she only wanted to go because her boyfriend Trevor studied there. During the tour, Dan noticed a German man on the phone and suspected a connection to McCaffrey. Before he could react, someone attacked him.
Oh, shit.
A brief fight in a chemistry lab ended with Dan subduing the assailant and rejoining his family. As they prepared to leave, Na found out Trevor was cheating and returned in tears. Dan comforted her with a martial arts lesson, strengthening their bond. On the road, their connection grew deeper. Na thanked Dan and considered returning to her editorial job. At a motel, Dan and Jessica shared a tender moment she sensed he had changed. Meanwhile, Dan called Augie, who was bringing new identities, though his family didn't know yet. Dan returned the phone and talked with Kyle, who revealed his pro-streaming career and challenged him to a laser tag match. First to tag 3 wins. Dan tagged 2 quickly. Kyle matched him, but Dan won. The game brought them closer. In Las Vegas, after checking into a suite, Dan met Augie, who gave him new identities, one-way tickets to Vancouver, and a large sum of cash. Later, Dan checked on the kids but got no response, so he and Jessica rushed back. Jessica was fooled by dolls arranged like sleeping children and felt reassured. As she freshened up to romantic music, McCaffrey's men attacked. Dan fought back, using vodka to start a fire and took down some attackers, but Jessica was taken hostage. When an attacker called Dan Sean, Jessica realized his secret. Seizing the moment, Dan neutralized the attacker. Jessica searched for the kids, found only dolls, and knew they had to head to Hyperx, where Kyle had mentioned. Despite Kyle's 30 kills, his team played poorly. Later, Dan and Jessica picked up the kids, and Dan revealed he was a secret assassin hunted by former colleagues. The kids doubted him until an attack forced them to hide behind a car. Dan subdued the armored attacker and admitted he'd worked as a mercenary for McCaffrey, who had killed 42 people. Kyle, calling him a hypocrite, began to understand why Dan avoided leaving the city and social media. After hiding the truth for 18 years, Dan gave his family new identities. Jessica became Molly. Kyle became Van, but they rejected him. Jessica decided to leave, vowing to care for the kids and calling Gwen for help, while Dan stayed outside guarding until morning. Despite Dan's warnings about McCaffrey, Jessica told him to stay away. When Jessica met Gwen, she found her powerful and cunning. Gwen spoke of a former lover who started a new life with a woman she disliked, but instead of jealousy, Gwen befriended her, patiently waiting to trap her. Jessica outsmarted McCaffrey, but the threat remained. McCaffrey called Dan, revealing he held Dan's family captive, and arranged a meeting at an abandoned hotel. At the penthouse, McCaffrey, Dan's biological father, mocked him and demanded he return to serve, promising freedom for the family if he agreed or death if he refused. Though Dan had defeated his henchmen, he saw no choice but to comply. Jessica and the kids vowed to protect him from this cruel fate. Moments earlier, the kids wanted to cut ties with Dan, but when Kyle pressed the elevator button, they changed their minds. Jessica defended the family by knocking down a henchman during Max's diaper change, and they all chose to stand by Dan. Meanwhile, Gwen tried to lure Dan back, ignoring the technician, but his family arrived just in time to rescue him. Dan knocked out Gwen and captured the technician. He apologized to Jessica for his secrets and vowed honesty and commitment. Meanwhile, McCaffrey grew suspicious of the technician, and Kyle's drone skills revealed Dan's tech talents. As henchmen closed in, Dan urged his family to flee to the rooftop while he fought. Kyle tracked the attackers with the drone. Outnumbered, Dan took down each henchman with skill. McCaffrey, alerted by the drone, woke Gwen to hunt Dan's family. Dan pleaded with his father, but McCaffrey refused. Under heavy fire, Dan dodged every shot. Jessica hid the kids and readied her weapon as Gwen appeared, mocking her. Jessica stayed firm while Kyle warned Dan that 9 more henchmen were coming. Dan swiftly took down each henchman, making McCaffrey's shooters look weak. McCaffrey finally shot down the drone with satisfaction. Meanwhile, Gwen overpowered Jessica, trapping her under debris. McCaffrey knocked Dan down and almost shot him, but got distracted bragging. Gwen trapped the kids but let Jessica escape, though she still brutalized her. Dan fought McCaffrey hand to hand, while Jessica's final bamboo stick attack failed.